Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here and David Breton with a Spending Time podcast. Before we talk about the most read Blog to Watch articles of 2018 and my summary on a Morgan Stanley report, my rant right now, and David, I want you to tell me if you agree, is watch industry, I'm really disappointed with you because I'm bored. You haven't released like anything of interest in months now. Like, why do you think I do this? You think I do this so you don't release watches? It's been far too long since there's been any watch that I really care too much about in a way that like I could wear it or that isn't a regurgitated other model or something like that. It's been a really boring last couple of months, and I have to like get excited about stuff. I have to get excited about making my own watches at this point. That's what's happening. Anyways, David, what
That's
do you
right.
think?
First of all, hello everyone. Well, second of all, I think the question here is why? Why we have witnessed the watch industry crawl to a halt when it comes to creativity? Why do you think that is?
They stopped paying all the creative people.
Or they just fled the industry, technically. They
I
would have
think,
been
well, it's
paid,
like
they just didn't
one
want to
happens
pay.
before the other.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a bit of both actually.
If you don't promote or have good career paths, it's kind of the same thing as not paying enough.
That's true. I guess that's true. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
all I've seen is countless creative people at brands in all different types of departments, including just product creation, feel unvalued, feel undermined, feel like they don't have any authority, feel like there's no career path. Basically, in general, being unhappy
Right.
and bouncing around from one brand to another or just leaving in general. This is a trend that I've seen happen many, many times over the years, and the industry isn't getting enough of these people that are new into into the industry. And so this is a problem. This is a massive problem.
It is a big problem. I do agree.
What do you think is the issue?
Absolutely. No, it's part of that, but part of it is also why do brands think that they can get away with it, and why are they getting away? I mean, if they were losing money on the hour, with their stale inventory and their watches not selling and people not buying them because they are old and not exciting enough, they would react. But I guess the point where they feel motivated enough to do something about this has not yet come. They still get away with really releasing these vintage inspired BS watches and the new blue dial and so on and so forth. And as long as that keeps them in business, apparently they are not inclined to do anything about it.
I guess the next few years we'll see if they are going to be forced to do something about it.
Mm, yeah. Let's talk about the best articles and this Morgan Stanley report, because once we get to the report, we will return to
I
this
haven't even
issue.
looked at this list yet. You know that? So I'm gonna
Okay.
be surprised. So what was the criteria? Is this from traffic? Yeah, I
Honestly, we
think
would
it
have to
is.
ask
Yeah,
Bilal, but
no, it is. It
if for
is.
sure is. If for sure is.
I wonder if any of my articles are in here. Do you think some of yours are?
Let's hope so. Yeah.
Okay. Top 10 watches to get nod from Watch Snobs in 2018. I that's one of those listicle ones. You know, people love these. We like to do them, but they're such hard work. I wish these were easier to do. Like these don't get the intellectual respect that they deserve.
Right.
So,
There are many different types of list articles, and some of them are just garbage. What people have to know is that we do put a lot of effort in and internal discussion into coming up with the
well, we
participants of
do that
this
with
list.
everything we do.
Duh, yeah, of course, but I'm just saying that this also applies to this list
But
article.
this also makes it clear that people right now are interested in affordable watches. I mean, we have other lists, and this one is specifically about watches that are, touted as being less expensive or higher value. So,
Yeah.
people like watches, but people don't want to spend that much right now. That's interesting information. What do we got here? Okay, this is mine. Why some watches from Rolex, Patek Philippe, and others are impossible to find at retail. So the first one is top 10 affordable watches that get a nod from snobs in 2018. And the next one here is about the difficulty to find conservative watches that sell for have a good resale value. and we're talking about low supply, high demand, speculation, people having a serious focus on resale value that doesn't necessarily make sense in a watch buying experience. But this article, apparently, what was told to me, made this much more of a topic of conversation. Did you notice that other people were referencing this conversation that we did?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this was on the lips of the nation in more than a few ways. People were trying to figure out why is this, and you did a fair bit of research and you shared a lot of background and behind the scenes information here in this article and a lot of good analysis that would help people understand why this might be happening. And also, there's a really great, really solid discussion in the comments section here with a lot of pros and cons and good ideas and some bad ones, but a lot of good ones with regards to
this
why
article
this might be
had a very robust discussion. I'm looking at the article about why. It's a long title. Why some watches from Rolex, Patek Philippe, and others are impossible to find at retail. A lot of our photography. Oh, a lot of my shots here. I like that. We do have good photography. I wonder what value our photography is going to have 100 years from now, when people are going to be like, what did luxury watches actually look like? I mean, like, our photography is a very good exemplar of what this stuff actually looked like. 242 comments.
Yeah, that's a lot of comments.
That's a fair amount. A lot of long comments here. Well, that's a really robust discussion. Well, I'm glad that
So
that's
let me ask you a question, because I think this was not in the article. It was not answered in the article, but I think people would want to hear your take on this. Would you want to own any of these watches right now? Are they on your list? That like on your shopping list or watches to get list, like the Pepsi or the Nautilus or some of this stuff? And does it affect you personally that you cannot get these watches, or you just don't care and you advise people to look elsewhere?
That's a good question. As a consumer, and I am a consumer right now in my life, I'm looking for a lot of value. What does that mean? I want a cool watch. I mean, I have to have a cool watch. My tastes are high, but I don't really want to spend more than I need to, because I don't have a lot to spend on watches right now at this point in my life. But I still, need to get good ones, so I can spend, a few thousand here or there. And I know by going around the world that in certain circumstances, your money can go really, really far in a good watch. So there are instances where there's watches I want that I can't get, which is unfair. There are certain Rolex models that were not particularly popular that I wanted to have one of the pieces of, and now those watches, just because of the overall Rolex inflated economy, are now very expensive and I can't get them. The Pepsi's
You
a great.
refuse to get them, even if you could afford them.
Yeah,
You wouldn't get them because you're like, there's no way I'm gonna pay this amount of money for this watch.
I think the all-steel new GMT Master 2 with the so-called Pepsi bezel is a fantastic watch, and
Yeah.
it's, as much as you can say, fairly priced for, about $9,500. At
Yeah.
$20,000, 18 or whatever they're
It's a
trading
joke.
at. No, what are you, stupid? That's like, there's
Yeah.
so many other watches you can buy at that price point. I mean,
Not even funny.
$18,000 you can get like a legitimately nice solid gold bracelet, awesome kick-ass watch.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay?
And also, like, for example, like, you can get, like, if you really want, you can you just get up to like a higher tier in watchmaking. You can get like a Breguet Tradition, in a gold case with all those gears and stuff exposed. And of course, the Rolex is a great watch, but it's a great watch under 10 grand. It's one of the best watches under 10 grand. It's in a very different league, and it's playing in a very different league when it's just below 20,000. That's totally different league of watches right there.
Yeah, I mean this watch here on the screen, which is the the Daytona with the ceramic bezel, and just, it's a Daytona with a ceramic bezel. It's not worth double the price of.
With a 20-year-old movement. So it's like it's an amazing movement. It's an amazing watch for 11 grand, maybe 12, but not 20. Again, Rolex has set its prices accordingly, and they are not dumb. But then again, somehow this, and of course it's the topic of another discussion. This situation.
I mean, what is it? What is someone's
came to be.
idea? They're gonna buy this watch,
Yeah.
and they're gonna keep it so they can make another highly conservative purchase after that and like overspend. Like what is the collecting trajectory here? Like where's the value?
The value is in that it's desirable. People don't necessarily just simply want it just because it's a conservative thing. No, they want it because they want to fling the watch that everybody wants, and they have it.
I still
And
love this Nautilus on the screen, which is the 40th anniversary one. That's
yeah.
bigger and in platinum and with the diamond hour markers.
Oh man, that's pretty dope. I would still rather get a Date 40 with in platinum with the same basically the same dial because Rolex has the baguette diamond
Well,
hour
the
markers
Rolex would
too.
be like half the price for sure.
I would much rather support Rolex than Patek, but that's just me.
No, no.
Uh,
Again, for me, it wasn't a competition. For me, it's like, would I have this or the 5711? I'm like, I'd rather have this one. This was the 5711 1P, which is it's just insane.
it's a boss watch. It's a kick-ass watch.
I like it.
I
It's
get
bigger too. It's bigger too, and you don't expect it to be platinum. You're like, what the hell?
you.
And the diamond
Um,
hour markers.
just for fun, I'm looking at the Breguet Perpetual Calendar, 3050 and 18 karat yellow gold with a beautiful guilloche
No,
dial and
we
an
literally
amazing.
got to article number 2 out of 10. This is terrible.
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay.
All I was saying,
Article
I was
number
gonna finish
3:
this.
which Rolex to buy? The Submariner versus the Explorer 2 watch comparison review.
I
That's
said I'm
Bilal's
gonna
article.
finish this. I was going to say it was just a good example that you can get like a solid gold watch with one of the most coveted, and most complex complications for less than a Pepsi GMT.
How much was that, Breguet?
Like 18,000. It's used, but
Oh
a lot of
no.
these Pepsi whatever
We
are
like a little
used.
patina in our life, huh? A little patina?
Mm-mm. Yes.
Okay, so this is about Rolex watches, and these are two available models, and people want to decide because they're actually not too different in price. So I
Right.
understand that. This is your article. This is hands-on with the Casio G-Shock GMW-B5000 D1, what a sexy name, full metal
Full
on the
metal.
bracelet, which this has been interesting. So this is a very interesting story. This watch has been a very big popular seller in 2018, sold out everywhere I've been. I had an opportunity to buy one at a store, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to let one of the customers get it because, like, I have connections. Casio has still not been able to deliver ours. This has
Sure.
been, so even in this economy, Casio G-Shock is also in its own Rolexy way a safe bet.
It's a poor man's ceramic Daytona.
Well, yeah, I guess in a way it is. In a way it
It
is.
exactly is. Yeah.
This is a fantastically cool G-Shock.
Right.
It's finally sexy in a way that a plastic watch has never been able to be.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, what are they like? I think $800 or something like that.
No, I think they're a bit more.
Really? Okay, so
No, no,
they're
no. Maybe. Sorry. No, they are about that. They are about that.
like this is not a cheap watch. I mean, when I think G-Shock, I'm like, oh, it's about $200 maybe. This is several times that.
mm,
But it's a very cool watch. It has solar in there. It has Bluetooth. It's like a very advanced G-Shock. So it's not like it's literally not your high school G-Shock if you know what I mean. But
mm-hmm.
so this has been a popular article with a very popular watch, and good job, Casio.
Yeah.
Confessions of a Serial
Five
Replica
hundred
Watch.
dollars actually. It's 500.
Oh,
Normally 500.
$500. Okay,
Yeah.
that's pretty cheap. So
Mm-hmm.
Confessions of Serial Replica Watch Buyers. This was an interview article that I had someone do with some people. I had someone interview some buyers, and I put this together. I kind of like was the director of this article. This had I want to see how many comments this one had. I think it was a lot because this article is it's Chris Malberg. I remember this guy. This is from 2017,
Mm.
and there was like such a fight in the comments. And
Oh yeah.
remember, I've written on Forbes, for example, about I think it was like the truth about fake watches or something like that, because a lot of
Right.
people legitimately didn't realize like, oh, they're not like the real thing, and they didn't understand the industry. And there was all these people that were like hating on me for calling fake watches bad,
Which they are.
which they are. So this one, okay, 177 comments,
Yeah.
and it's like this fascinating look into some of the reasons why people like these products and how they justify them and how they've gotten better. And even I mean, these are all
It's
illegal.
garbage. All of it is garbage.
So
All of it.
here's the interesting thing. This is the interesting thing, and I think that you'll agree. These companies are smart but very strange in a very like perverse fashion. The idea is essentially this: if you are so good as to try to replicate a $10,000 watch in a like $200 or $300 or less price point, why don't you just do all that same effort but into a watch that you are not ripping off the name? And they're
Because
like,
the point is ripping off the name. They
"Right,
they
but
they
why?
capitalize on the name.
I understand, but they're doing it from a strict economic perspective because they think in the sort of the short term it'll make them more money. It's a short
Yeah.
term outlook. It's all about maximizing profit. It's such a direct and purist like look at business. It's literally
Mm.
making a value judgment. They're like, well, if we
Yeah.
get caught, we'll just move our operation elsewhere. But what they actually managed to do from a replication and manufacturing standpoint is phenomenal.
Sometimes, yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is just think about the price to value ratio here. These aren't even high production.
So sometimes what they do is they end up, they stop making these fake watches and become a supplier to the Swiss watch industry.
Well, a lot of them are suppliers to Swiss watch industry, so
Yes.
that's where a lot of these parts are coming from.
Yes.
Anyways, I just think it's very interesting. Okay, number 6 is Omega Seamaster Diver 300M steel watches for 2018 hands-on. Who wrote this one? This was probably at Baselworld. And it's so weird to think that this year, in 2019, Omega, like the rest of the Swatch Group, will not be at Baselworld. That sounds strange to you?
It sounds, it definitely sounds strange. I wish Baselworld well, and I really want Baselworld 2019 to be amazing and 2020 to be even better. But 2018 and 2017 and 2016 have been absolutely just freaking horrible in terms of, from an organization standpoint. And if Swatch Group had not pulled out, it would have been exactly the same 2019 all over. It needed to happen for it to just show some effort and try and improve. So I'm not shocked at all. I'm actually happy about it. I wish them well, but this needed to happen for some people to be let go from the organizers and for them to start caring about what we are saying, what the brands are saying, what the global audience is saying.
I mean, I think everyone here has a point. There's like no one's innocent here. Like there's all kinds of serious issues with the trade show that need to be addressed, and I
Yes.
agree. I agree. I'm just saying, the next couple years for us as media is going to be very challenging because how to address these shows is going to be like a moving target.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the Omega Seamaster Diver 300M steel, and I guess it comes in other materials as well. Very cool watch. I've been reviewing one, the sort of all steel one with the black dial. I mean, this is a design from 1993. They modernized it a little bit, gave it a much more modern movement, of course. It is their, what do they call it? The master chronometer that has meta certification, all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
Not everyone really likes this watch, and I vacillate. I actually sometimes feel that the weakest link in this watch, and it's been updated, but it's still kind of the same, it's the bracelet. Like, I'm ready for this watch to have a different bracelet.
Yeah, and I think years ago I always just rolled my eyes when people were like, freaking out over 1 millimeter, size difference here and there. But this watch grew by 1 or 2 millimeters, and I think it's not for the better of it. It really looks bloated in this larger size. The dial somehow it grew in all the wrong places. It has like a narrow dial with regards to where the indices are, and then the bezel is way outside, and then this minute track on the periphery. It just the proportions are gone. Not completely destroyed, but it's pretty bad. The previous version had much nicer proportions, in my opinion.
Well, if we know Omega, they will continue to be tweaking this watch for the next several years. I mean,
Forever.
they will. We like that they do that. So this is
Yeah.
just year one, but this was one of the most popular articles. Okay, moving on. A Rolex, the Oyster
Wow,
Perpetual
a Rolex.
39. So these were not new introductions as models, but new dial colors with a black dial and the white dial on the Oyster Perpetual 39.
Yes.
I just thought these were like, it's basically their new entry level model, about $5,500 If I want a difficult to get Rolex and it's not there, I'd just get one of these.
Yeah, it's pretty much like every other steel Rolex ever. Sometimes it's the most amazing watch, and on some days it's the most boring watch ever. I don't think
But
this
it
is a watch
fits
that,
everywhere. Like no one's gonna be like,
yeah,
What?
yeah, that's precisely why, because it's so general
You and your
looking.
boring Rolex, get out of here.
Yeah. No, it's a great go anywhere watch. Yeah.
I like this one.
But
When I saw this one, I thought it was handsome. I don't know that I
yeah,
wear it every day, but I think in a lot
yeah.
of circumstances, a watch like this would go great. I haven't seen that many in a while. I saw a few actually, but I haven't seen
People
them in
just
stores.
people just pay a few $100 extra, and they get like an all steel Datejust or something like that. You know,
That
just for the look. Yeah, with the steel bezel, it's not that much more expensive.
here,
It's a little bit larger, and they can say, "Oh, this is the Rolex with the date." Um, you know,
yeah,
and
no,
this one has the old movement.
yes, it does not have the new sexy movements. But it's $5,500, brand new, if you can find it. The next article is the Orient Bambino Small Seconds SS review.
Ooh.
This watch was about $300, so that's more than the Bambino used to be. But like, it's so much better watch now. It's got like a modern movement, and it looks decent. This watch, um, I think like the other Bambinos, is going to keep going. It's not as clean and simple because it's got a subsidiary second style, but I
And
think
the
that
date.
yeah, but
Ugh.
I think that if you just are getting into watches,
Yeah, this is a
and
great watch.
this is so awesome. Like there's so much for your money here. And so I'm
Hmm.
glad that there's people getting into watches. When an article like this is popular, it tells me there's a bunch of people just getting into the hobby. Cuz you and I can
Good
appreciate it, but
point.
we're like, well, we're kind of beyond this.
Good point.
But people are buying this watch and people are getting into the hobby, which is I mean I've always known it's happening. Um what how I'm trying to think like how long ago would you have been a good Orient, wearer?
Like 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, I think.
My first
So,
Orient was their diver, the 300-meter diver, their saturation diver, which I
eh,
I love that watch. That was the coolest one
I,
ever.
yeah, yeah, that's a pretty cool watch, and it's also a great gift. Like if you have a family member or whatever who's getting into watches, you can just get them a Bambino. Maybe not the $300 watch, maybe just one that costs half as much. And it's such a great start. You get a lot of the feel and a lot of the vibe that a mechanical watch has. So yeah, that's great. By contrast, here's the Patek Philippe
Yeah,
Nautilus
this is like
711.
Rolex, Patek, cheap watches. This is so weird. Omega, like it's very interesting assortment. Like predictable but interesting to see. Okay, so my review of the 5711. This is the Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711. This is the blue dial steel, the watch
So
that
in
is
one
trading.
sentence, how did you feel wearing this watch? I'm not provoking any type of response. Just let us know how it made you feel to wear such a coveted watch that
Um,
retails for
I
30 and
I
actually sells for 50.
yeah, I mean this watch it jumped up in price like $4,000 or more. So it more very recently was about $25,000, and people thought it was a
And now
lot.
it's
And then just
30.
boom, it's 30, and it's trading for over 50.
Mm.
Um, I think one of the things that I thought about a lot when I wore this watch was how great it is to have a thin sports watch. People sometimes forget that the Nautilus and the Royal Oak are very thin watches.
And the
And
Laureato
yeah,
also.
and they're great. It feels so nice to have sort of like a sports watch which is thin. I don't know that I need
Yes.
to watch that thin all the time, but they're really comfortable on the wrist, and they're more like jewelry. The way the cases are finished is more like jewelry than sort of a traditional watch. So a lot of the price is in the fact that all these pieces need to be polished the right way and stuff like that. So I
So
get
how did it make you feel? Apart from appreciating everything.
I
Did
mean
you
it
feel
was
anything
okay.
special about it or whatever?
No, it was fine. I mean it's a good product. I mean, look, I have a number in my mind of what I think this watch is worth. Like if I was like pricing watches and someone said like, "Okay, look at the movement, look at the quality, da 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 da. What do you think you should charge?" And I take into consideration Rolex pricing and all,
25.
Seiko and things like that. And for me, the retail price that I think this watch is worth, given sort of the inherent value, is
Mm.
not what the current retail price is. It would be less. I'm not
So how
saying,
much?
well, that's it's a personal thing. It's less. Um, I'm not saying it's cheap. I don't think this should be like the same price as like a Submariner. I think you can charge more for
No.
it, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
say stratospherically more.
I would be, if I was looking for a new watch and I wanted to get myself something nice in steel with a lot of extra hand polishing and hand finishing and all that beyond, what Rolex offers and exhibits, in steel, I would I would love to be able to consider this Nautilus, and I would if it wasn't associated with all the schmucks in the world wearing it. I'm sorry, and if it didn't cost 50,000, but if it cost 20, it would
There's
be
a
on my
lot of
radar.
there's a lot of schmucks out there that feel very hurt right now. I just want you to know
That's great. Well, they identified themselves by wearing this watch and
that.
paying 50 grand for it. But
I
that's
don't
all I've
think
got to
anyone
say.
should pay 50 grand for this watch. I think if you can't get it, then
Yeah.
find something else. I mean, somebody showed me an official email from Patek Philippe
Mm.
that confirmed their placement on a wait list and
Yeah.
estimated the wait time was 8 to 12 years for their 5711. There's an 8 to 12 year official wait just to have the privilege of buying this watch at retail price.
Eight
And
years?
8 to 12.
Oh my God.
I,
You never actually own a Patek because we didn't sell it to you.
I mean, look, I believe that Patek Philippe has that. If they didn't, it's a great marketing trick. I mean, it's a lovely watch. It's fine. It's not worth waiting 12 years. I mean, there's so many watches you can wear in the meantime. Oh my god. Wear friends for a weekend and call it a day.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then go to a watch store within 50-mile driving distance and have like a bazillion other options for way less.
I think it's a good idea to put your name on a list and then just get on with your life and then make sure you constantly update your contact information at Patek so that they can reach out. And eight
I'm
years from now, you can buy it.
I mean, I've seen a lot of watches. I know good stuff and I know quality and like, you know,
You know what? We should
$29,800.
we should all sign up because we could feasibly just start a piggy bank and just keep putting change in it. And in 12 years, there's a really good chance.
I mean,
Can you
the
imagine going
movement's
to
great. The movement is old technology, but it looks fantastic.
I want to go to a Patek boutique with like just coins. Like, hey guys, you made me wait 12 years, so here's like
190 comments. Wow.
you can have like 12 hours counting
Oh
these
god.
dimes and and
Okay.
quarters and stuff.
And finally, the Planet
What
Ocean:
a,
The Full Story of Omega's Iconic Modern Dive Watch article by Bilal. That this is a big one as well.
yes.
Um, well, I mean, look, this is some of our highest quality content. There's no big surprises here. Um, we are our most popular content is some of our best content. I think that's, I guess, great. No surprises.
Yeah.
Now on to the topic of Morgan Stanley. So you read this report. Why did you think that Morgan Stanley took the time to put this together?
I guess someone assigned them to do it.
Well, yes, thank you. But I mean, like, what
That's
was
the
their
only reason
reason
I
to
did.
study the Swiss watch industry right now? Like, why was this worth their analysts' time?
Um, Again, I struggle to associate any inherent internal drive that Morgan Stanley had, So I struggle to see anything beyond it was assigned to them, and this also shows in the points that they were making, which you criticized in some parts of the article, right? You weren't entirely happy with all their points that they made.
They rushed a few things, but I mean, these people do a lot, and for what it's worth, this is a very intensive report, and I think that it's among the better ones. I've seen so many poor reports by prestigious companies or companies I've never heard of on information related to the watch industry, and some of them are awful. This is really among the better ones, and the level of nitpickery I got into was because I had so much respect for it. But
Yeah.
there are things that it didn't quite get right, or it had answers that it needed in there, because there was questions it needed to pose. For example, why the watch industry has continued to produce so much extra inventory long after they should have found out about it. Like, it proposes a mechanism called the bullwhip effect, which says that perceived demand can amplify production beyond actual demand. So
Right.
it can create this ballooning effect where the supply chain makes more than the market actually wants, and because of that, the watch industry produced too many products. And that may be true, but that sort of is a very innocent phenomenon. We're like, oh, well, this is just happening, despite people's best interests. They failed to say that it was being done on purpose and why, and that it was a problem in the management system and the incentive system and things like that. And that's where I had to talk a lot about it, because I have been saying for a long time one of the biggest problems in the watch industry is a failure for the watch industry to create or attract and actually keep good managers. I mean, you and I, just between the years we've been doing this, I mean, how many less than well qualified or effective managers, CEOs, directors, head of whatever of brands have we seen? I mean, would you say it's a high number?
Oh yeah. Well, it's I don't think it's as simple as the bullwhip effect, and it's not as simple as good managers. What I wanted to say is that, just for one more second to react to what Rolex is doing and all this supply that is held back. If you mirrored this image, this would exactly be like the reverse bullwhip effect that Rolex is doing. There's a huge amount of customer demand, and they're not, and they are really super scared of ever meeting it, because once the second the demand goes away, and you're still pumping out, the machines are still working, you're still delivering watches to the market, inevitably those watches, at least some of them, will end up being discounted, and the moment they get discounted, your brand or a collection or something like that gets screwed, like,
okay,
totally.
So let me say what I think. I believe that there are people at Rolex that are like, hey everyone, why shouldn't we just make some more watches right now?
Yeah.
And there's probably a group of people inside of Rolex that want this, and a group of people that say this is unprecedented, we don't know what to do, and another group of people that just don't care. And the problem at Rolex is, to get things done, I believe that they need to have a large consensus among individuals. And that takes time. So what that means is that this effect of this high demand needs to happen for like several more years before everyone's like, you know what, maybe we should do something about this.
But the question is, how do you do something about it? Rolex has an extremely well-controlled, now finally, well-controlled distribution system where you're, one strike and you're out. So if any retailer is caught selling a piece to the gray market or something like that, they are out of the Rolex distribution system immediately.
I think the answer would be, hey, people want a lot of Submariners. Well, do you ever think about making more Submariners? You certainly can. Steel isn't exactly a precious commodity, at least not yet.
It's not about having the steel. It's about being afraid of making too many and then ending up, with an oversupply. They are overdoing this. I completely agree, but they're just super careful about not, doing like anything that would end up with oversupply.
But I'm just saying, in many other types of industries, they would be like, the market wants more. Can we make more? Let's go do that.
But they're not luxury products. You cannot name one more luxury product, in my opinion, where you can do it.
I'm not disagreeing with Rolex. I'm simply saying that Rolex internally definitely has people, I'm sure, who are saying, guys, why don't we make more steel watches? But there's other reasons than just making money to make more steel watches. If demand...
they are upsetting a lot of people.
Exactly. And it's not like Rolex is actually withholding. They're not like sitting there with a giant supply. They're making the same amount they were planning on making from the beginning.
Probably.
They want most of the Rolexes out there to be two-tone steel and gold. They want that to be the reflection of what the Rolex lifestyle is. The professional ones are there to maintain the legacy that they created for the last,
50
many
years.
generations
Yeah.
of being involved in sports and adventure and science, and that's all great. They do that very well. They can't
Mm.
lose that. It's essential for the branding. You think these these race car drivers and stuff like that are thinking about wearing their date dress? No, they're thinking about wearing their sport watches. So
Yeah.
that's a sex appeal that I mean again, Datejust is a great watch, but it's not where a lot of the sex appeal is. It's where a lot of the sales are.
They should, yeah, the problem is that, like they just a lot of the other watches that they make and that are readily available are more formal looking. That's the problem. If people don't really go, they are not everyone is a president, to be wearing a day date all the time. And not everyone can afford a day date to begin with.
But
The
Rolex is
day
just
just
like we just want to be on the wrist of people who do look that way.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's easy to say when you make 10,000 watches, not when you make a million.
I I- I'm just trying to sort of present an argument.
Oh, oh no, I'm not. I agree, and I agree with you. I'm just saying, what is it that
So here's an interesting graph. Exhibit 13, watch and Richemont inventory days versus other retailers in 2017.
well,
I
that's
think
hilarious.
so. This is the amount of days that inventory was sitting before I guess the customer bought it.
Mm-hmm.
Swatch is the highest of this entire list at 720 days.
Holy crap, that's
That's
two
several
years.
years.
It's 2 years.
How'd that happen?
It's really weird.
Richemont is 379.
I mean, something has to be skewing that average big time. So, for example, if you look at Omega, there's another exhibit that specifies this. Omega has 800 different SKUs, different model variations. 800. So technically, you're bound to have at least 1 or 200 of those, at least, that spend years and years and years on the shelves. So and that really skews. Of course, you are going to have like some watches that sell really fast, but when you have hundreds that are not selling really fast, then wow,
Well,
that's gonna.
even if we don't understand these numbers correctly, let's compare them with some other companies here because we may be reading this wrong. But let's look at so we said 720 for Swatch, 379 for Richemont. These companies are companies that I believe are in England. I don't know a lot of these companies. Here's the Watch Gallery, 152. So that's like less than half of Richemont. H&M, 130.
Which is not great.
Not great. Tesco, I think that's like a supermarket chain, 17. Morrison's is the lowest. I'm not sure what that is. That's 15.
Inditex, for example, is 86. So that gives you like a pretty good idea. Like
What is Inditex? What is that?
Inditex is the group that owns Zara and a bunch of other fast fashion affordable brands.
Okay.
So fast fashion brand sells a product in 86 days. So when it comes to that, to have luxury watches in Richmond that sell in 376, so about 4 times more slowly, that's not too bad. 720 by in contrast, with Swatch 2 years, that's insane.
Well, whatever it is, the numbers seem a lot higher for Swatch and Richemont versus these other companies here.
Yeah. 720 is just wow.
So the other part of this report was DTC, which stands for direct to consumer, and
Yes.
Morgan Stanley talks a lot about the effect that selling direct to consumer is going to have on the watch industry. And it's more or less convinced that selling direct to consumer is going to be a big part of their strategy in the next several years. Would you agree?
Yes, I would. Absolutely.
Um,
Not to the exclusion of everything else, but not to the complete exclusion and annihilation of the retail, brick and mortar system, and other third party distributors. But yeah, it's going to happen. It's bound to happen. People love buying stuff from brands, and online shopping is getting bigger and bigger every year. And the brands want to, get as big a slice of that cake as possible.
So we interact with the brands a lot. How far away do we think they are from being able to do this successfully? Because let's face it, there's some things they're great at. There's some things they're terrible at. They're great at making good watches. Things like successfully like locating, communicating with, developing a relationship with, persuading, selling to, fulfilling customers online is something that I'm not sure they know how to do right now.
I think it's several years away, even for the biggest brands to master it. At least 2 3 years for the biggest brands and the most dedicated brands to this process, and then it's another 2 3 4 5 years for the rest.
Morgan
What do you think?
Morgan Stanley. Well, I'll say Morgan Stanley has no real opinion other than
Hmm.
it's going to be very disruptive. They kept saying the word disruptive again and
Yes,
again and again in
yes,
their
yes.
report. And disruptive means that there's going to be massive changes that are going to break things. And
Hmm.
Morgan Stanley has no other examples of other industries to look at to draw wisdom from. It doesn't make any specific ideas about what's going to happen to companies. It just makes it clear that they need to hold on steadily. They also talk about the companies that are going to die, so they make it clear that a lot of companies are going to die. But they think that Swatch and Richemont and a few others that are well capitalized, in other words, have tons of money to weather a big storm, will be able to survive. But Morgan Stanley, without saying so, admits there's going to be a massive, massive, massive consolidation. But, and I want to say, and I think this is really worth discussing at this point, is the big group watch industry is getting smaller. There is an enormous level of space right now for what are being called micro brands or startup brands or things like that. That doesn't mean that there's less consumer interest. It's that their business models of profiting from watch sales and growing those businesses do not work right now.
Yeah. It's the consolidation and the big things happening and the dependence on being well capitalized. I just want to specify. I think that was mentioned with regards to buying back unsold inventory, and clearing up the market, right?
It was discussed several times, but they said that
Hmm.
the disruption from the period now to transitioning through whatever they need to transition through to sell direct to the consumer is going to be disruptive, meaning a lot of people aren't going to survive it. Because think about it, this requires brands transitioning their entire sales model. Some of them are bound to not get it right, and if they don't get it right long enough, they'll run out of money.
Yeah, which is sad.
Well, good. If the watch industry has taught us anything, it's that good brands live forever. Am I right? So
Yeah,
someone will always
absolutely.
rescue them. Okay, like even if
Hmm.
Omega went flop tomorrow, it'll be back in a few years, guaranteed.
Oh, absolutely. It's too valuable as a name, and
Good brands live forever.
they're like cockroaches.
um, they, Morgan Stanley agreed with me that the Swiss watch industry at the lower level are being affected by smartwatches, and they're talking like a few $100, which I always said. They don't seem to say that there's any effect at higher price points, which I agreed with. And they talk about how China is a economy that they need to start taking seriously.
Oh,
I,
good morning.
well, look, it's controversial when I say it, but they just sort of expected watches to be like really good gifts for
Mm,
China, meaning like these watches are going to sell really great as gifts. But
mm.
now they're like, oh, the grafting economy is over. The government regulations are really trying to push and stamp out that's doing business by gifting. So now it's going to be a consumer economy of people buying watches for themselves, which means they're not looking for the highest prices, they're looking for good values because Chinese consumers are obsessed with good value and finding great stuff, and they're very good at
And
it.
yeah, and they keep learning more and more. The Chinese luxury watch consumer today is much, much more educated and much more experienced than it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago even. And that shows in which brands were able to keep doing well there, and which brands just died out from there. It really shows
So
which ones were just a passing fancy and which ones are there, to provide good enough value to maintain their good relationship with the Chinese customer.
what I admire about the Morgan Stanley report is that they got the best data they were able to get, which isn't much, and they were able to
A lot of good
extrapolate a
data.
good amount of information from what they did. So they did
Yes.
a good job, but look, they can't predict the future. And
Yeah.
ultimately, this report is basically an outlook on an industry for investors so they can see what the next few years are like. And if you're an investor looking at this, it's not looking too rosy.
It's not pretty. Yeah.
You know, so what do you do? You don't buy because you could go down much more. Do you sell or do you hold?
It depends when you purchase, If you if you want to get out and get into something else that looks more rosy, then I guess if you bought in at a good time, then sure. If not, well, I would just like to just time travel and skip the next 5 years if I were an investor in the watch industry.
Yeah, I do not now, nor have I ever held any investment position in any of the watch groups. And I think it's a policy I have. It's probably a good idea to have it. So it means I can
Yes,
talk about this and never have to worry about it. But I don't know. If I was an investor, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I want these companies to do well. I just don't think they
so do
do
I.
well as having shareholders. I think the privately run companies, the ones that are run kind of like privately run companies, are the ones that end up doing the best, pleasing consumers the most consistently. And so those are the
And they're
companies we're
much more
champion for.
relaxed. And they're much more relaxed. Look at Patek, look at Rolex, look at AP, how freaking laid back they are. It's incredible. When in comparison to those in big groups and those that are publicly owned.
Yeah, and like Jaeger selling 110,000 units in 2017, they claim. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think that's true. Maybe they tried, but like, even these numbers need to be taken with a grain of salt, is what I'm saying.
What are you suggesting Cheshire is not selling 3,000 watches every day, each day?
Well, just saying. I've seen a lot of it, Jaegers and windows and things like that. Um, Longines claims to have sold 1.9 million. That's
Holy.
that's impressive. That's impressive. 1.9 million watches in 2017. Mind you, 2018 was an awful year and worse, so these numbers are probably all going to go down.
Yeah. It was not awful, but it was a low year. It was not as bad as it could have been,
So
I
who
think.
so who has the most SKUs and the lowest sales? Let's see here. Because like Audemars Piguet has 232 SKUs, which is a lot, 42,000 units for 2017. So that's not the
All
lowest
of them are
tier.
Royal Oaks. That's ridiculous.
Most of them are Royal Oaks, that's correct.
Yeah.
IWC by comparison has the lowest number of SKUs at 178, but they've sold 190,000. So they have
Still a lot.
less SKUs but more units. Jaeger says they have 184 SKUs, which seems like way too much for Jaeger.
Aria, would you agree that these are way too many SKUs? Does IWC need
Does Tag
178
Heuer need 553?
It's ridiculous. Oh my God.
Does
And
Cartier
you know
need
what? When you're
642?
when you're buying one watch, at least some part, some tiny amount in the purchase price is put towards maintaining this giant machine that and the storing and the managing of 500 or 400 or 200 different watches. It's a huge cost factor every year for these brands. Tremendous cost. And when you're buying a watch, of course, it has to pay for all of that. Part of it has to go towards that. It just sounds dumb. 640 Cartiers. Oh my God. It's ridiculous. Rolex is 450. And I think, and of course, that. So what people have to understand is that this includes different dial variations and dial colors and so on. So when you have a Daytona, you can have 10 different dials on all the different materials that already add up like 60 or 70 different Daytonas just right there. And they only come in four metals. So it's just pretty weird. But yeah, I think it's just too much. It's just far too many
Maybe.
SK.
Every single time we talk to a new CEO that goes into a brand, the first thing they say is, I looked at the number of SKUs and they boggled my mind. We have to get rid of them. And a few years later, all of a
It's
sudden,
more.
there's like more SKUs. Because the more SKUs you have, the more possible types of watches you can sell to retailers.
That's right, but I understand that, but at some point it has to
I'm
be
not saying
too
it's a
many.
good policy. I'm just saying the reason that SKUs get bloated is so that you can fill orders with a diverse set of watches and be like, oh, but you got to have all these dial colors.
Hmm.
And then you can go to like a specific region and be like, we're going to save this dial just for you.
Just
So
okay.
this is interesting. So I mean, I think that the unknowns are comfortable enough for me in the watch industry that some of these things will sort themselves out, especially when it comes
Right.
to direct to consumer. People want to buy watches. As long as there's demand, there'll be a market for it. And, Richemont just bought Watchfinder UK, and it bought, it has Mr. Porter and Net-a-Porter. These are portals to consumer behavior online that, if used properly by Richemont, can teach them a lot of very important things. So we are on a good trajectory towards watch sales, luxury watch sales modernizing, but we're not there yet. And I think that we have several more years at least of being in a really uncomfortable territory. I think the big groups are going to consolidate even more, which is going to be problematic. I mean, you have to think about it. There's way too much of a manufacturing base.
Yeah.
And once things start hitting the economy in Switzerland, then it starts to get awkward.
Yeah. And nasty, which we don't want. I think that's a nice note to end on. Right? Is there
Yeah.
anything else we should add? I
No, we
think
could talk
this is
about
getting really long.
boring watch economic stuff all night long.
Yeah, that's true.
I love it. No, people love this stuff. And you know what?
Yes.
Thank you to everyone that when you see me and you compliment the show, I appreciate that. It's a very strange format for us. It's something that we've played with for years. Like, I've done all kinds of podcasts, and I still never quite think that I understand like how to do it right. I still feel like I'm trying to look for the right avenue. I enjoy it a lot, but it's interesting how it continues to mystify me from a creative standpoint.
I guess we could say that if people have feedback, constructive feedback, they could just leave it in the comments. We would love to hear it.
Did you look at the comments?
Yeah,
Good. I'm glad someone is.
you should too.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much. Happy New Year from myself and David, I'm sure, and the entire Blog to Watch team.
Yep.
And we will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Talk later.